still not recording it for some reason. Oh, there you go. Welcome everybody. My name is Liz Stuffins and I'm the chair of the Midlands Parks Forum. We've got a bit of a themed event today around education and community involvement. So we've got Matt Robinson from Learning Through Landscapes. We've also got Steve Jackson from Northamptonshire Council and James Tilford from Nottingham City Council. So there'll be a question and answer session after each of those presentations, and then we'll have a short break and come back and we'll hear from Dave Morris, Sarah Royal and Martin Willis from the National Federation of Parks and Green Spaces. Next slide, please. Some notices from Alison Bate.
Just a reminder to anyone who's in the room to forward your subscription form, if possible, for our 2021-22 membership. And we'd like to welcome 3 new members so far this year, which is Northamptonshire. We've got 2 people in the room today, that's great. The National Memorial Arboretum and also Jupiter Play and Leisure. They were hoping to pop in today to share information on a free event, a free virtual tour of a new play area, but we have the link if they're not able to attend today.
Okay, next slide please, James.
And just another notice that we are expanding our board of 6 trustees, so we'll be sending out information shortly. We're looking for a range of skills to enhance and strengthen our board and share the skills across. As you know, we just have 1 member of staff here, myself, at the moment. So if you have any skills in accountancy, finance, we particularly want some representation to strengthen our contacts in the East Midlands. So skills around parks, networking, knowledge and collaboration, or any business skills, events management, HR, legal, charitable, and IT and tech, which is not our strong point, but we are getting to grips with all these webinars, so that's really good. So that will be coming out in the next few weeks. If you're interested, please give me a call for an informal chat.
Great. Next slide, please.
And that's just a reminder about there's a parks management survey that is on social media at the moment, on Twitter. We can provide all the links as well. I'll put the link in the chat later. This is a follow-up to the State of UK Parks report that was published 6-7 years ago. So APSI and CFK are coordinating information, but it really needs the input of parks managers to present that evidence. So if you haven't seen the link, please contact us and we'll put it in the chat later.
Yeah, as it was just saying, Alison, that we had, when we talked yesterday, I think last State of the UK Parks report, they had 174 responses, which made it obviously a really solid base. At this time, they've only got 30 so far, albeit there's another 2 weeks to go. So really important that people fill that out if we're going to build that evidence base about the state of our parks.
Yeah, it does require quite a lot of information about finances, so it takes a while to accumulate all of the information, but it is really important.
And if you can complete an evaluation on today's webinar, we'd find that really, really helpful. It helps with selecting speakers and the type of information that you want. So that would be really good. We'll put the link again in the chat later on.
So over to you, Matt. Yeah, if you ask for James to continue to scroll through the slides when you need them.
I will do, that'd be great. Hello everybody, apologies for Mary's not with us today. It felt more appropriate for me, so let me give you a quick introduction. And My name's Matt. I live in Dunblane in sunny Scotland. You can see today. The reason I've come along for Learning Through Landscapes is we've been conducting a project up here in Scotland called Learning in Local Green Space for the last about 3.5 years, and prior to that, the previous 3 years as well. An agenda that started originally with an ambition to get learners and children out into basically our national parks and our national nature reserves. And it's quickly realised that not everybody has access to the car, the bus, the train to get to these places, and actually to focus on local green space was a much more achievable thing. So I've been leading a bunch of that project with Learning Through Landscapes. We've been working with across the whole project about 100 schools, but for Learning Through Landscapes about 40 schools in the most deprived areas of Scotland, and supporting them to use whatever local green space they can access. So that's why I'm here today. Next slide, please. Those of you who haven't met Learning Through Landscapes, we describe ourselves as the National School Grounds Charity. And our ambition is exactly this, that we think that outdoor learning and play is just part and parcel of normal school life for every child. It is not a standalone subject. It's not something that's optional. This is something that is just downright good teaching and learning, and why wouldn't you? So that's our ambition. We've been going about 31 years now, with the privilege of having Sir David as our patron, and many projects behind us. Next slide. We do all sorts of bits and pieces. A lot of our work is focused on, I guess, supporting teachers and educators to lead this outdoor learning and this play for themselves. You'll see as we get into my presentation, I think, and I say this as somebody who's got 20 years of outdoor learning behind me, there's often a mismatch that when you go outdoors, you have to have some kind of expert lead it. And that really just isn't the case for the majority of outdoor learning that schools and nurseries undertake. So as part of that, a lot of our work is focused on effectively teaching teachers, equipping them, supporting them to say, you can do this by yourself. We can provide the opportunity, but you can do this. You don't need the cost and the hassle of bringing somebody in. And particularly when you combine it with green space, you can do this really easily in a time and cost wise as well. Next slide. So first question, just to kick off, use the chat function on this one. The green space that you manage, whatever that is, and I know there's a whole variety in this forum, what are your priorities? Why do you want to see schools and nurseries come and use that green space? What is it for you that is your agenda going on? It'd be really good just to have one or two things popped into chat about what your priority is for your green space in bringing schools, nurseries, families, youth, whoever in. What's going on there? I'll give everybody a couple of minutes. I love the first one being health and well-being. Thank you. Hurrah. Brilliant. Respecting green space. Respecting local space. Isn't it interesting? One of the largest challenges we face here locally in schools and in green space is to do with sort of vandalism and abuse of green space, and that lack of respect missing. Connection between humans and caring for the planet and nature, yes. Learn about heritage, yeah. Huge amounts of that. Yeah, and again through lockdown, that connection with nature and green space has been so well demonstrated. I don't know about you, but our parks and green spaces have never ever been busier than the last year. Introducing new folk. We'll talk about some local geographies later. There's some really interesting bits about how local geographies are shrinking and people don't know. The most obvious place that you think they must know that park, it's only 6 streets away. They don't necessarily. Caring for the environment, ownership, yeah, brilliant. We'll just get the last couple. Great. So Lynn, you're obviously spending some time having to pick up the pieces after issues and damages. Brilliant. Equity in green space. Yes. We've got a fascinating project on the go at the moment to do with all sorts of kind of economic and ethnic minority groups, and how I say this as a white male in the outdoors. And if you're not a white male in the outdoors, that can be quite an intimidating place to be. Have a good time. Yes, health and well-being. Thank you all. As you can tell by my responses, these are all very positive things. These are things I'm enthusiastic about, and we would completely agree with you on. If we go to the next slide, this is what the teachers often talk to us about. These are their requirements. So it's not that they disagree with the things that you've just been saying. Like me, most teachers would be very enthusiastic about these things, but actually their day-to-day pressures, the things that are on them, actually often come before all these things. And I think we are seeing a resurgence in particularly teachers kind of know deep down in their heart, that kind of mind, heart, hand thing. They know that green space is good. They know that there's learning there, but actually that's not the pressure they're facing every day. Cost is number one, and here's a big benefit of being local. Actually delivering curriculum and actually being able to turn around and say, actually, you know, we've just gone and counted all the trees in the park. We've just surveyed things. We've just written poetry, created art, things like that. Using the outdoors as a better context for learning. Not everybody sits like me at a desk looking at a computer for their day-to-day work, and actually learning skills in the outdoors is really important. There's also big concerns from teachers to do with things like class management and behaviour. As soon as you go outside, if you've never been taught to be a teacher outside, this is very, very different. And also concerns about kind of access, risk management, amounts of paperwork you have to do, things like that. So you can see there's just a mismatch there. It's not that any of them are wrong. It's just that maybe we need to understand the teacher's mindset if we really want to attract and make our space more attractive to schools and nurseries to come and use. You just grab the next slide. So this, speaking of teachers' language, is really important, and just having a little insight into do it. If you've looked at any risk management to do with schools, the phrase routine and expected is something you have to go and get understood. There is national guidance on this, and it basically says things like local green spaces and parks, getting on the bus and going to the museum. These are all routine and expected. They do not require a specific risk assessment for that day or even a specific permission for that day. They are done on an annualized basis. I've just saved your teachers 3/4 of the paperwork, by the way. But it also means that if you're a green space expecting children to come, we need to fit in with that and make sure that we're not asking for excess paperwork or excess preparation before they come. It fits into that routine and expected. Go and look up at it on the Outdoor Education Panel Advisors page. It's very clear about how that works. When we're putting together some resources, we make sure there's links to the curriculum, and we make those curriculum links really clear. I'm not out counting trees, I'm out surveying the height of trees, and there's a piece of maths involved in that, etc. Lots of phrases like kind of inquiry-based work quite well in green space. Well, how does the tree change over the year? Let's go and draw it in all 4 seasons, or take a photograph in all 4 seasons. Lots of things about what you've learned back in the playground and the classroom, you'll then apply to green space. So I've learned how to estimate the height of a building. I can now go and learn how to estimate the height of a tree and conduct that tree survey that we were talking about. Have we talked about how the teachers demonstrate learning? That's a really important one. And again, when you're providing resources for schools to come, can they actually demonstrate where they're achieving against the curriculum? And the final one is don't dismiss play. Incredibly powerful tool. A lot of your green spaces will be equipped and designed for play, and therefore how we visit that play is really important. Keep going on another slide, please. As we said, local is cheaper. quicker to get to, less paperwork. It's very meaningful. Hopefully the children will go back by themselves, drag their parents back. I've got so many anecdotal stories of introducing children to a local park and them heading back at the weekend with their parents. It's absolutely brilliant. This thing of local geographies, so many children now jump in a car and get driven from warm house to car to warm house. They don't walk the streets anymore. They don't know the shortcut. Finest example, one of my children's friends moved to the secondary school and had to ask my son to ask him to find their way across Dunblane. Dunblane's less than a mile across, and this boy at 12 did not know his way to the secondary school on his first day of secondary school. Less than a mile. Frightening stuff. And also this thing of local requires a bit of a change in teaching approach and attitude as well. It pushes teachers to do things a little bit differently. On to the next slide. For me, this is this huge connection. My local park, my local green space is actually all about the global perspective, global goals, the global climate crisis, things like that. And if I don't understand that on a local, looking at the tree outside my window point of view, how on earth can I understand as a child the Amazon, a place I'm never going to be and I haven't been, and what deforestation looks like and things like that. So knowing local conditions is really important. Next slide again, please. Just want to introduce the idea of something called place responsiveness in learning. So this is where the place is just as important as the thing that you're doing, the activity. A lot of outdoor learning focused on, I will teach you to use a canoe properly, and I'll teach you how to paddle it in a straight line because then you know how to paddle a canoe. And the subtle change now is, I will teach you to paddle a canoe to go in a straight line because I want to get to the beach over there because we're going on a journey to this amazing little beach over there. I'd like you to go for a walk somewhere, not because it's a walk, but because I want you to explore the park and those meaningful experiences. So if you've not, look up place responsive learning. Some of the handouts I've got some bits and pieces on, and these are really powerful. The picture there is one of mine. This is Lough Island, some of you may have heard of, up in the Cairngorms. Beautiful place, I've been many times before. Why does that day stand out? It was -19. Tell you what, that was the most stunning, beautiful time to stand and look at this calm loch and look at it. But the temperature was just as important. And how I experienced a place that I'm familiar with was really important. Let's move on again. What can we explore? Lots of bits and pieces. Bottom right is a primary school out in the forest, and we'd invited one of the grandparents in to come and tell us about the stories from when she was a child and what they used to get up to in the woods, and they would go out and play and what they got on with. And she told us some of the most amazing stories. And I tell you what, for the summer afterwards, those children were out exploring those woods just outside the back of their primary school. And they were out playing the games that they'd heard this lady talk about. And they were making up stories to do with some of the myths and legends. So as well as kind of some of the nuts and bolts practicalities and the biology and the geography and the maths, there's also a sense of kind of that history that somebody that put in there as well, that respect and understanding for what went before you. And I don't just mean things like Romans or Victorians, I mean the people in your community who used to play there or used to do things there, or the concerts that used to happen in the bandstand and things are just as important. And finding out this inquiry based rather than teachers teaching. Let me give you an example. If we go to the next slide. Really simple. What's this? What's the learning potential of the most straightforward of things in a park, a rhododendron? If we go to the next slide again, I'll give you a few ideas. We can use rhododendrons in cooking. That was news to me when I was looking this one up. Huge amounts of it to do with, we could go and take pictures. We could go at different seasons and draw it. Doesn't it look nice to walk past? We could sit and write a poem. Which beastie lives in the tree? And what happens to it when we leave the park in an evening? What do the beasties get up with? Let's go write a story. There's a question here about the explorers who first brought them back to the UK and who they were and why they brought rhododendrons back, which leads quickly on to, are they now an invasive species or not? And how do we manage that? And could the children be involved? And again, following that, because these are foreign, we could go somewhere and find out the myths and legends that there are to do with rhododendron and what other people think about them, which takes us back. So from the most straightforward bush, if I actually sit down and think about these things, I've come up with all sorts of learning opportunities. And some of our challenge with teachers is to highlight this. You guys already know this, you know all that learning opportunities there. Our challenge sometimes is to open teachers' eyes. They don't know the opportunities that are there. Next slide again. And there's the last piece of information. Oh, just back one. I've just added the name of the rhododendron. Really importantly, that was the last thing I told the children. Up until that point, as far as they were concerned, this was an interesting purple plant that we'd drawn. Maybe we'd learned rhododendron, not a lot else. We'd maybe learned the stories. We'd maybe learned about who had brought it back from the Himalayas. We've maybe learned about the work in the park to look after it and manage it so it doesn't invade. Only at the end might I then go into some of the deep science and say, I'm going to inflict some knowledge on you now. This one's called this. And I think that's a little bit of a flip around in some of the learning, some of the way we've done it. I'll say this carefully. My father's a volunteer at a community garden, and he and some of his friends can be quite quick to want to teach the children some real detailed stuff about the plants before they actually care for the plants, have an insight into them. And I think there's just a thing in learning to kind of step away and go, I'll get round to my passion later. I'm going to develop the passion in the children first. Next slide again. I'm nearly there on my time. So summary, places you've got are a better place to learn for teachers. And I think how we get that across to teachers and nurseries is really important. Let's just skim through these next couple of slides, just a few seconds with each. So we think outdoors is a better place. Being there regularly and routinely, being able to walk out of school to these places is really important. That it's normalised for the whole community, and then there's ownership. There's real care. Some of you were talking about this care of children, understanding that's my local green space. I don't want people trashing it, please. It's got global perspectives. Play is really important. If you come to Scotland and Wales now, we have the UNCRC on rights of the child enshrined in law. Children are expected to play every day, unsupervised, preferably in green spaces. That's a requirement. And we're moving that way in England now as well. And again, with play, we're not always talking constructed places and slides and swings. We're talking bushes and shrubs and places children can go and hide and be, and loose parts and things like that. Next one again. Lots of resources. I've got some handout sheets I've put together with lots and lots of links on. One is our website. Go and have a look at it. There's a load of stuff there about kind of lesson ideas for teachers, lots of which are appropriate in the green spaces you guys got. There's a set of family play ideas, how you come to the park and make little junk boats and float them in puddles, and how you can use sticks, and how you could go and have a picnic with a teddy bear, and just real simple kind of childhood pleasures like that. There's a bunch of free publications. There's also some risk management advice, some of the stuff I kind of strayed into with my routine and expected. So that's worth a good browse of our site, and particularly the free resources and guidance is worth looking at. Next slide again. I've given you the link to all of these as well. So all these books are there. Some are free to download, some are paid books. So things like Juliet's Dirty Teaching book is a paid book, and the Learning Outside the Classroom. But things like the Learning and Local Green Space Professional Learning booklet, The Child with the Magnifying Glass, and things like that are all free to download, and you can get them. A really interesting one for some of you guys might be the Play Out of Hours. Now, this is a Scottish Government publication, but it's a toolkit for how we use particularly public spaces that are paid for by taxpayers' money. And we had an issue up here where schools were being shut up at night. And of all the safe, secure, taxpayer-paid places for children to be, we were saying it's now 3:30, shut the gates and go away, you can't come in. And there was a real kind of take against that. So there's a toolkit there about how you open up these spaces, minimising vandalism while maximising play and family opportunities in these safe, secure places for them. So you've got all those links and bits and pieces there. That's a very quick gamble through. I've got a few minutes for questions. Any particular questions from anyone so far? And I've probably deliberately provoked things with some of what I've said, so come back at me.
Any hands going up?
I've either said everything I need to, or I've not said enough. I usually manage to.
Question from me, Matt. I started off in environmental education years and years ago. Have you seen a massive growth in teachers wanting to get outside with their groups, or is the tendency to just want to stay within the school grounds?
I think the pendulum swings. And I think at the moment, particularly with the last year in mind, we're starting to see the pendulum swing back to people value green space. I don't know many teachers at all who go into the profession because, frankly, it's a good paycheck and it's an easy life. They go in because actually they believe in education. That often comes with values about valuing nature, green space, engagement in people, things like that. And I think at the moment, the last year's pushed people back. So I think, despite funding being an issue at the moment, I actually think we're about to see a kind of swing back in people who are engaged in that, and that includes teachers. The challenge they've got is to go back to my slide about all the pressures that they've got, and there's so many pressures on teachers as to how they should deliver things and the way that they should deliver. A lot of schools that really get outdoor learning and play is through good leadership. If you've got a head teacher who's behind it, see the school do it. If you've got a head teacher who is reticent, doesn't understand it so much, then that's when you've got a challenge. And I think I'm going to be particularly brutal at this point and say we will often leave schools alone if we've got a head teacher who just says, no, I'm not interested, because we're pushing water uphill. And where there's a school where there's a head teacher who says, yes, welcome in, let's talk, then you will start to see, yeah, we'd like to use the park. It's an obvious place to extend from the playground. It broadens children's experiences and learning. That's when we go get stuck in and we put our effort into there. So
great. Sarah, did you want to raise something?
Yeah, loads of great ideas. Thanks for that. The main thing was how you communicate with the teachers, because obviously they've got such limited times and so many pressures on them. I'm just wondering what you'd recommend in terms of communicating some of what you're offering, what you're recommending, because obviously them reading through the things can be a bit of an issue in itself.
That's a really good question. We've a couple of things that we do. One is there's no substitute for first-hand experience. If you can persuade the teachers to put a twilight training into coming and walking around your space, that is just like the biggest winner. Like sending them a document to read, and frankly, I bribe them with cake. And it really is as blunt as that. We've got so many schools that we worked with for this project who said, oh, we're not so sure. I said, look, I'm coming. I'm bringing the flasks of coffee. We're taking the cake to the local park, and we're going to go and spend 20 minutes after school just exploring the park and asking the question, what is the learning potential and what would you think about bringing a group of children here? And that by far and away was our most successful thing. I could send them reams of policy, tons of lesson ideas, flyers for my space. Didn't mean a thing. Walk down to the local park and say, here's a cup of coffee and a cake. Would you walk around with a colleague and come back and tell me what you think learning potential is in 5 minutes? I had teachers enthusing about, frankly, what were quite dodgy urban parks full of a bit of dog poo. And they were going, oh, I can suddenly see this opportunity. So, yeah, if at all possible, get to the local park and do not be afraid of a cup of tea and a cake as a way of bribing them down. Something similar.
That's great. And I definitely can persuade myself if there's tea and cake involved.
Exactly.
I'd be up for that.
Lynn, do you want to ask Matt a question?
Well, not particularly ask a question. I've been working with teachers with the local schools and the Forest School for some time. It's just my concerns. We've got some very good head teachers locally that send the non-academic kids down for gardening and forest schools, but we need to change the curriculum. And I don't want to go on too long because I'll end up ranting. But it's the emphasis on maths and English, and they're not making it fun for kids to go to school anymore. I just think we've got such a huge problem. I'm just doing the best I can with what I've got and working with the local schools, but it needs to come from national government because they're putting more and more pressure on these teachers. We've got a mental health hub based in the park, and that's now spread in the whole of Cannock Chase through the amount. There's so many teachers that are suffering with poor mental health before COVID because of the pressures they're under.
Lynn, you said a couple of interesting things, so I'm gonna join you with your rant. One, you said, the school send us the non-academic kids. Well, doesn't that do our outdoors a disservice if it's only for a certain child, and certainly the ones that we brand as, for some reason non-academic. I use this regularly. One of the maintenance staff at my old out centre was deemed as non-academic, dyslexic, and basically his final report at school said, "You will never achieve anything." This guy at 16 drove to his first day at work in his own tractor that he had rebuilt himself, and behind it was the trailer that he had built from scratch and worked out all the gear ratios for. The most high achieving student I know, and literally a week after he left school with a report saying you failed, he drove to work to come and maintain half a forest around an outdoor centre in the vehicle he'd built himself. Ridiculous that, that's non-academic apparently. I think secondly, you're right about this pressure of maths and English and academic achievement. Our argument is this: outdoors is a better, faster way to learn. We've got some studies that were done with Oxford University, and I'm trying to remember where the school was. I want to say Buckinghamshire, and they looked at some English lessons, writing literacy, and the students who sat in four walls and tried to write a story did okay. The children who walked 10 minutes to the forest at the end of the road and sat and wrote their stories of, wizards and elves and whatever in the forest, wrote a better story, had better grammar and English, were more motivated to do so, and wrote so quickly that it saved the 20 minutes of time it took to walk to the green space. Now there's our evidence that we need for some of these schools to say, this is a better way of learning. You want to raise attainment? Go on and estimate the height of a tree. Go and set up a speed camera at the edge of the park and measure the speed of traffic and do your speed, distance, time calculations. Your children will never forget doing that and working out who was speeding and who wasn't. So I think there's a strong argument to come back at the attainment and say we can do better.
But we've had research for years, Matt, and we had Every Child Matters come out years ago, and yet we're still having more and more pressure on the maths and English and the stats. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
I agree, and we have more of it up here as well. I think we just keep making our argument that says this is a better way to learn. Again, with the interest in the Green Space project we had here in West Lothian, one of the areas we were running it, a few schools were seen doing these things. On their Twitter feed, there's suddenly children down the woods with clipboards out and stories published and things like that. And all of a sudden we had 2 or 3 other local schools phone us up and say, "Oh, that looks really good. What's going on there? How could you help us with that one?" And I think sometimes it's also just about sharing what other people are up to and kind of normalizing it. And actually that works quite well. But you're right, we're pushing against some politics and some agendas here that I don't like personally.
Dave, a question from you?
Okay, is that me?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically involved because I'm from a friends group and friends movement, in fact. And how does the interface between the schools and the parks managers and the friends groups work? Is it easy to integrate community groups into obviously school groups where there's a lot more rigid kind of protocols?
Yes and no, and is my awkward answer. I think that's part of my comment about things like paperwork and learning what this routine and expected is like, and therefore there doesn't need to be excessive paperwork and excessive barriers to get there. But also, again, I think some of this for me is coming down to individual teachers or head teachers and building a relationship with them. Not just expecting that, well, we're the friends group, you'll come and use us. It's more a case of, oh, they were really inspiring people. They've got a lovely piece of green space and they want us to come in. Let's build a relationship with them. So some of it's relational, some of it's about knowing our stuff so that we're not feeling the pressure of too much paperwork and process.
Great. I think that's all for questions. We've got useful links page there that you've provided for us. So thank you ever so much for
that will get sent on,
contribution.
won't it, as like a PDF or something for everybody to click on?
Yeah.
Great, brilliant.
Right, and next speaker is Steve Jackson from Northamptonshire. Over to you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much. Northamptonshire, it's a nice new one. It's 15 days old. If you can just move on to the next slide, please. Doing my best Chris Witty there. So on the 1st of April, Northamptonshire County Council ceased to exist, and it merged with all the seven districts and borough councils within Northamptonshire. So we now have North Northants, which is one of the unitary councils, and West Northants. So it's all very new to us. All of the legal side of the county council and the borough councils has been sorted out and finalised properly. Other areas like the country parks and green spaces, we're kind of still evolving over the next kind of 12 months or so. So Lloyd Rees-Carlson's on the call today. I've not had a chance to meet him yet. He's not met me. But, you know, as we move further forward, we will be working a lot closer together. So if you hear cropping up North Northants and East Northants, sorry, North Northants and West Northants, there to replace the county council. My kind of role in the parks across what were the county council ones is to manage the Active Parks project, which is a project between what was the county council, the Northamptonshire Public Health and Northamptonshire Sport, which is one of the 43 active partnerships in the country. And all we're literally looking to do through the project is to help improve people's mental and physical health by engaging in the natural environment. Hence why when Matt asked, my first response was health and wellbeing for schools. It started in 2019 and is running until 2022 at the moment. And then public health gave us those three kind of target groups really as a starting point. But as things move on, we've adapted slightly. Next slide, please. Thank you. I kind of went into start with, I always take this approach of taking things back to basic, you know, what was outdoor learning? And we went to the Institute of Outdoor Learning to find that out. And in its broad term, it's just about engaging with the environment and the natural world. Now, it's not age specific. Any time in your life, we can do that. So we're trying in our parks to make this a lifelong journey and have this pathway all the way through from birth right the way through till the other end of life, really. Next slide, please. So again, like Matt said, curriculum for schools is a priority. That is what they're getting judged on by Ofsted. It's how we could help support that within our parks. How does what we're offering them in our green spaces support that ultimate aim of the curriculum delivery and the progress they're going to make in that? But equally, what does your offer give above and beyond the curriculum? You know, the increasing confidence, seeing those different people thrive in those different environments, communication skills, all those sorts of things that we know are a benefit of engaging in outdoor space and the natural environment. We're about to engage in quite a big piece of work actually through the councils to engage as many schools as we can to see if there has been a shift in what schools are looking for as a result of COVID, whether there are more looking to come outdoors and do more work, whether mental health has now become more of a priority, etc. So it'll be interesting to see whether our perceptions of that have changed, whether what we've got is still fit for what for what's required from the schools. Couple of kind of initial thoughts really from our point of view. Teachers perceive outdoor learning as very much a summer activity. I used to manage one of our outdoor centres for a little period of time, and Easter to the summer holidays was absolutely packed solid. Couldn't get another booking in anywhere, and it's the same for our outdoor learning, our country parks. But actually September, October is a lovely time to get outdoors. It's about how we encourage and challenge that perception of it can only be done in the nice weather. You know, how can we weatherproof our activities and our sessions and that time out of the classroom all year round? What are your education areas set up like? Do you have education areas? I don't know. We're lucky enough to have one in each of our parks that we can use flexibly for our groups or allow groups to use if we wish. But they are flexible spaces. You know, they're not necessarily kept pretty because they don't need to be. You know, we can have den building there. We can have some rougher areas where they can go and investigate and hills to climb and those sorts of things. Looking at the barriers to outdoor learning as far as we think at the moment, time. That kind of relates with what Matt was saying earlier. You know, they don't have a lot of time. They've got a lot of planning. As a governor in a school, I appreciate how much time goes into delivery and planning and creating these lessons and the recording, all those sides of things. Budgets are tight. They've got even tighter as they've had to buy the COVID resources and all those sorts of bits and pieces because they're not getting much in the way of additional funding for those sorts of things. And teacher confidence. You know, all through their training, it is in a classroom, in a safe environment with 4 walls. So that teacher confidence of getting them outside can be quite challenging. They can find that quite tough in that respect. So it's getting them out and helping the teachers feel confident and comfortable with it. In Northampton, and as part of the public health as well, we also have the outdoor learning health for schools team, sorry. And through that strategic placement with us and our project and them, we've managed to get outdoor learning as part of their frameworks that they're setting up, and it will be included both the mental and physical health parts of their Healthy Schools framework. And we're going to be in the next kind of 12 months setting some sort of green space challenge to schools. We're not sure what that looks like yet. We're in the early days of pulling that one together really, but it's just quite handy having those other links to other parts of public health that people recognise that you can support and get your message out there alongside them. And if you can move on for me. And back to kind of that, what are teachers getting out of it, what the school, what's it hitting the curriculum. We've got every part of our outdoor offer, we've linked it back specifically to parts of the curriculum. So that is a sheet for pond dipping. There's 21 curriculum aspects it hits across those 3 key stages there. So key stage 1, lower key stage 2 and upper key stage 2. So again, it's just supporting teachers to see instantly the tangible benefits between the programme and what we're offering and the curriculum links, as well as all those soft skills that come with it as well. Okay, next slide, please. As I said, outdoor learning isn't just for schools. Okay, so we are literally having this pathway all the way through from birth. We're working with the Strong Start team, who are part of our libraries. And these networks will exist all over the place. If you are part of a local authority, it might be slightly easy to access, but the partnerships are there. You just need to find them. So Strong Start working with new parents and new families, bringing a baby out to a green space. It's easy for us to forget how daunting that can be. We're in it all day, every day. We're happy to go for a wander, find ourselves somewhere not quite very familiar and find our way back again. New parents with new babies don't necessarily want that. So we're kind of meeting them, we're getting involved in that programme, showing them around the park, showing them where the toilets are, the easy routes to get back. And we're actually going to be hosting some of their startups on face-to-face delivery as well, because they're still virtual, they can't use the libraries at the moment. But hopefully by giving them that confidence, they're going to start building relationships with their peers, they're going to come more regularly, become those regular visitors, and if we can get them as children enjoying the outdoors and green spaces, we know they come back later in life, even if they have a gap at teenage years or whatever. Then we hit our toddler programme, Nature Tots, very informal, some sort of theme to follow, bit of a walk, bit of a nature gather, bit of a play. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. If they're not engaging with what the education ranger is leading on, it doesn't matter. They're out in the green space, they're enjoying that element of nature, they're having some fun and exercise. And Wild and Woody is just kind of that next stage up. Then we've got our family stuff. We've actually started kind of since COVID all started working with home educated families a lot more. And it's not just about doing the forest school type stuff. We are doing more of the stuff that teachers might do. You know, we are doing surveys and habitats and life cycles and those sorts of things. But it's also about the stopping the families feeling isolated. There's a lot of isolation goes on with home educated families. The children don't engage with other children of their age. We get some children who don't thrive in school for whatever reason. And one of the children we've got read out loud for the first time and he's 12 on one of our sessions, and the mum was just in tears because of that impact it had had. Holiday trails, you've got the copy of the Brixworth photo trail there, you know, downloadable straight from our website, helps us parents come to the park, follow a safe route that isn't just necessarily follow the way markers, gives the children something to look for. We've got active play trails which take them out to the play equipment out in the middle of the woods and those sorts of things. And then on the bottom there I've got the training. We've got big session with two of our groups at the moment. We've got East Midlands Autism, who are doing their Building Better Opportunities project with us, and that's about helping people with autism find regular work or regular volunteering. And you know, they're rocking up to us, they're driving themselves to us, their parents, but because they're autism, they're struggling to get into long-time work. So they're volunteering and helping us manage the parks. But simple, effective, easy to do really from our point of view. Next slide, please. Moving on to our adults, you know, adults need time out too. And there has been a big increase in socially isolated people over the last 12 months or so. It can be the Walking for Health, which are very easy to do. We do a thing called Natural Minds, which is the two ladies there with their attempt at Willow Reefs, but they'd never met each other. And, you know, they're now regular walkers in our parks just by joining one of those sessions. We've got volunteering sessions like most people. One of those is with Russian Mind, which are those guys there just putting that willow tunnel in for us. They've been coming all the way through lockdown. They have changed so much just by volunteering and getting involved. Their confidence in themselves has been huge. And yeah, right, they've been referred to as from Mind, so there are mental health issues in there, but that's not a problem. You know, they're fine, they manage it. They're assessed before they come in from Mind, so if they need more support, we can put that support in. So there's lots of groups like that, and those guys there will meet in the park on the days that the session isn't on, and they'll go for a walk. So they're really using our park now to manage their own mental health as a nice safe space. I'll put map reading in there, but it can be any skills that your team have to teach and pass on. You know, some people have gifts with willow weaving, some people map reading. It can be photography, any sort of sessions along those lines. The big chunk of my work at the moment is with the long-term health conditions and getting those in. And we are doing a lot of bespoke sessions with them to start with, but we are feeding them into our public sessions as well. So it's not necessarily about learning the nature side, it's about learning how to be active with their condition. And that is kind of my background, comes from more sports development than environmental development. But I had a group again with COPD that came to a walk at the park. The pre-discussions were they wouldn't make the shortest of the route. Through them leading how far they wanted to go, they pushed themselves on. They walked double the distance expected. We had a coffee, which you know I got for them. But after I left the meeting, they were still there another 2 hours later and had been in the coffee and had another 2 cups of coffee from the cafe, etc. So it's that confidence that they can come out and do things that they never thought was possible. We've even just done some sensory walks with Sense. They're about to launch a lot next week. So if you've got any opportunities there to make a sensory walk, that's quite easy to do. And the other kind of thing we've got at the moment in Northampton is a good link to the social prescribing link workers. You know, there's this big push in doctors and health to social prescribe things rather than medication and further treatment, which is always really useful. There's some of the social prescription link workers will join us on our health walks. So they're familiar face, they're happy face, increases that confidence to keep coming back time and time again. On the next slide, please. Thank you. So part of mine is all about the physical activity as well. So we can't do everything ourselves. We do have 2 park runs when they're up and running around COVID rules in 2 of our parks. outdoor Tai Chi, and we've seen a bit of an explosion in approaches from various organisations wanting to take their operation outside. And we're never going to be able to offer that within our team because we don't have the right qualifications. But Tai Chi, parent baby fitness, Nordic walking, all those sorts of things, if somebody is able to do that, bring them into the park, they come back in their own time, because they feel it's a nice safe space, it's a relaxing space for them to do those things. And the next slide, please. Next couple, really, just about Sport England and their new 10-year vision. I don't know if anybody's picked up on this yet, but coming out of COVID, they have basically launched their big 5 issues and the next 10-year strategy, and they're summed up there. The things I picked out on that one: recover and reinvent. They're reinventing with a relevant, sustainable network of organisations. So very much going away from sports clubs and leisure centres and traditional sports, and they're looking for a network of organisations that will focus on physical activity's ability to make better places to live, positive experience for all children and young people, strengthen the connection between physical activity, health and well-being, and then creating places and spaces that make it easier for people to be active. Things that we can do in all our green spaces, we do day in, day out. And on the next slide. Thank you. We want to work with other organisations. Okay, this comes straight off their website. It doesn't matter what sector or industry they're in. So slightly digressing from the outdoor learning, I appreciate, but we're talking about the recommended levels of physical activity is 150 minutes a week. That is so daunting to people. If you don't do anything at the moment, it's unbelievably how scary that is. So we just need to make sure that we start small, because if we can get them out to a park to start with and get them having that mini little walk of 100 metres, we can then push on further and further from there. And if you're going to go for some funding bids, that for various things around Sport England, they've got their Active Life survey where you can get loads of local data that will support any funding bids around physical activity and those sorts of things. But you know, we've got COPD that's been funded by Tackling Inequalities Fund, and they are literally coming out doing a mini walk, some natural craft, and then they're using that as their counselling sessions and support sessions as well. So when we're talking physical activity, it doesn't need to be the boot camps and the runs and things like that. It can be the volunteering and what I kind of refer to as exercise by stealth. And the next slide, please. These are just some things that have come off our forms and evaluations from things, and it was interesting to pick out some of the bits and pieces that they felt to comment on. The top one: more able to embrace the outdoors whatever the weather, doing something different, teenagers smiling for the first time in a long time, much needed learning and socialising opportunities. So we're starting to pull these bits across, like the teachers when we started right at the beginning with Matt. What we think we're giving them is not necessarily what they're getting out of it. They're getting so much more as well. That's all from me, unless you've got any questions.
Thanks, Steve. That was fantastic.
Sorry. Whistle stop and fast.
We've got a question from James.
Steve, I was just wondering, what's the kind of, you think you said this was a fixed term thing, is it? So what happens at the end of the funding, or what's the legacy? Do you see it continuing, or?
The project itself, we've already extended by a year. It was supposed to end this year. It was supposed to end end of March. We've got the next year. We're in the early stage of discussion that there's signs that it may continue to be funded, but equally the whole principle from the beginning was around making it sustainable to move forwards. We were talking very early on about whether we put minibuses on the road and bus people into the parks and those sorts of things, but we did feel that if the funding stopped, that would be one of the first things to go, which then doesn't help anybody. So yeah, it's all been done with the thoughts and process behind making it sustainable at the end of it all. Matt, your hand's up.
Sorry, Matt, you're on mute. As was I earlier.
There you go. Sorry, your last comment, I think, says a lot. I engage with teachers about things like curriculum and maths and English. I know we're full well in the background. There's huge health and welfare and social benefit and environmental stuff going on and seasons and all that. But I kind of don't talk that language until they're there, stood looking at the pupils. And then suddenly they're going, oh, my word, look how happy he is today. So I think that's just a really telling comment about how we deal with some of this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I've worked with schools through swimming and outdoor learning and outdoor adventure centre for over 20 years now. And it's always those younger teachers that come and are surprised by what we can achieve when you get them out of the classroom and that reaction. But equally, that doesn't dissipate with teachers who've been teaching 20, 30 years. They still get those goosebump moments of a child achieving something they never thought they would, or seeing them interact in a certain way. You know, we're lucky with that, being outdoors and engaging it all the time, but teachers, it's new to them.
Matt, sorry, Steve, I was interested. We've been working with public health for quite a while now in Walsall, and they do actually fund quite a lot of our work now. We've been closely working with sports development, and we're now a sort of healthy spaces team. So we actually have, as I say, got quite a lot of support from public health. One of my colleagues brought up something about a green cafe proposal, which was funded through another sort of public health funding programme at Delapre Abbey, the Delapre Abbey project in Northampton. Yeah.
I've heard of Delapre Abbey, and vaguely now you've mentioned it, I'm not sure what the details of the project are actually, I have to say.
Yeah, I just went on the website and it seemed to be a sort of connection of the Abbey Trust and you know, sort of a heritage-based project with something within the park as well, and linked to an area of deprivation. So it was something that I was quite interested to find out a little bit more, you know, when we're allowed to go out and visit places. I'd certainly want to go and have a look at that, and whether we could, you know, have a look at what you're doing as well, if that's possible still, in, you know.
Happy to host anybody anytime. I mean, the Delapre comes under West Northampton now, which was part of the Northampton Borough. So that's where the connection is. But yeah, certainly interested, happy to have a look at it with you, to be honest.
Lovely.
And but yeah, always welcome to drop in and say hi.
Thank you. So our next speaker is James from Nottingham, James Tilford. Over to you, James.
Hi everybody, thank you for the invite today. So I'm James Tilford, I'm from the Parks team at Nottingham City Council. I'm here to talk about today an activity pack that we created. There's no coincidence that the caricature on the left, there's a resemblance to our very own James Diamond. That was intentional. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to go through what the activity pack contains, but I just thought I'd give you a bit of background of how the actual activity pack came about. So it's part of the Future Parks Accelerator project, which was a collaboration between the National Lottery Heritage Fund, the National Trust and the Ministry of Housing and Local Government. And the basic national aim of that project was to look at building a sustainable future for parks and green spaces, of which there was 9 local authorities across the country, one of which was Nottingham. And Nottingham had its very own specific aims as part of their ways of looking at making their parks sustainable. And the main priorities for us was looking at a 25-year strategy for our parks, improving our volunteer programme and experience, looking at commercial opportunities, and also having a massive campaign on consultation and public engagement. Next slide, please, James. So my background was I was tasked to look at the consultation and public engagement for this whole project and how to get it out there into the whole city and make sure that we've consulted with the whole city and all the different demographics of it. One of those specific demographics was children aged 8 to 9, of which this activity pack was designed for. So we had a massive plan how we'd target that age range. We had a whole host of proposals we was going to do, events, visiting schools, and then COVID hit us and basically it put a massive spanner in the works. All the work we'd done on how we was going to engage with this age group went out the window. It was a case of, what do we do now? We need a plan B. And I'll be honest, it was when I was watching one of the COVID BBC bulletins. I think it was one about how the whole nation was coming together to volunteer and how people were delivering medicines to neighbours and food parcels. It was whilst watching that I had the inspiration that maybe we create a pack and we get it delivered out to all the school kids that are actually stuck at home. They're bored. They're not doing anything. I'm not going to lie. When I came up with the idea, I thought I was an absolute genius. I thought I've nailed it. This is going to be it. This is going to be it. So then I contacted one of a community charity that I work closely with, a toy library in Bulwell. And I contacted them because they've got contacts to lots of these school kids that are now at home. So I contacted them, told them about this genius idea I had, and then they burst my bubble. They turned around and said, James, we're already doing this. We're going out to our school children and give them activities. However, they did say that they was on a very tight budget and the stuff they was churning out was very basic. So then I came along and said, well, we do have some budget for this. So let's collaborate and come up with a really good activity pack. One that gives them activities to do whilst they're bored at home, also gives them something educational, and also we can slip in this consultation we need to do with them and find them. So the plan was to deliver this through their network of contacts. So we went about producing it. Then Boris changed his mind and kids went back to schools. So then we had to rethink that. So basically, we chose 2 schools to work with, contacted them, and they were really enthused about this idea. So we distributed approximately 250 activity packs to these 2 schools. Next slide, please, James. So this is the full extent of the pack. It came with a nice jute back, so very sustainable. So once you've used it, you can do your shopping with it or use it for whatever. In total, there was 11 activity sheets within the pack, and then there's 4 engagement sheets within the pack. And included in that, you got all the materials you needed for the activities and all the stationery, including a paint set, scissors, you name it, it all came. So the idea was to create something that was really engaging and fun and exciting, and something that the actual kids can actually take out in the bag and actually physically go onto the park and start using it and actually engage with their park. Next slide, please, James. So these were the first front sheets. The sheet on the left was just a gentle welcome, and it was identifying some characters we'd created just to narrate the story. There's nothing worse than corporate design to stop people reading. So we wanted just to make it a bit more engaging. So we had some characters created. The first sheet was to name those characters. And that was really an introduction then for the second sheet, was where we was asking people to actually create their own character for the park. And by doing that, I don't know if you can make out some of the questions on the bottom, but then we started delving into stuff like the favourite things they like doing about their parks and why they visit parks, and trying to get that consultation information out of them. And just to give it a bit more kudos, the whole idea was the person who came up was going to have competition. The person who came up with the most interesting character would have it reproduced in 3D and large, and have it put on signs and posters and whatnot. One of the things out of the project we wanted to do was we wanted to give it a bit of longevity. So we decided these characters would be used on other publications, posters, park signage. So, for example, there's an image of a dog. We're going to use that to. At present, we use signage for like corporate signage, say dogs on leads or careful of dogs with wildlife. With these caricatures, it's something more engaging, pretty much like the Canal and Rivers Trust have done with their signage. I don't know if you see one with the woof woof, and then in brackets it's please control your dog. Something that's a bit more engaging and gives these characters a bit of longevity outside the activity pack. And then the third sheet was basically trying to get into the mindset of the children about how they would like to see their park and what they want to see. And there's some prompts in there. Next slide, please, James. And then we had some fillers as well. We had a colouring in sheet. And then the other consultation material was a diary about your day on the park. Working with the toy library, one of the things they said was best for consulting with children was getting them to tell a story. And actually, when they tell a story, they're actually revealing a lot about their experiences and what they like. So that was the whole idea about having this day in the park for the diary. And then the sheet on the right, Journey to the Future. One of the things that was really hard to try and consult with kids was sort of feeding into a 25-year strategy. It's just not going to happen. So we had this whole story concept that you'd sit on a bench, all of a sudden it whizzes off into the future, and I was asking them how you expect parks to look in the future, as well as what you'd like them to see. So it's just getting inside their heads and trying to get some interesting answers. Next slide, please, James. And again, this is just another a play on getting them to think about what they like from their park and how they use it to give us that feedback. So this was a postcard idea. They'd fill in a postcard and return it to us. And then also included in the pack is a load of stickers. Everybody loves stickers. Next slide, please. And then these are some of the activities that were included. So, for example, the one in the middle, the pavement games. Shortly, as well as going into schools, we saved a few packs back and actually had them on some of the parks so they could be picked up and used by people visiting parks. And probably about 2 weeks after having this on some of our parks, we actually start to see chalk drawings on some of our parks. So it's really good to see that they've been using them. Next slide, please. Again, these are more activities. All the materials for doing these activities were included in the pack. I highly recommend the magic flowers. If you've not seen it, I can forward it on to you. It is really good to see it actually happen in real life. Next slide, please. Again, these are just examples of other things that were in the pack. This is where the toy library were invaluable with some of the activities that they did in their forest schools. Next slide, please. Again, these are some other examples. And what we also use is some of these we used to fill in our notice boards. And again, with the trailblazing fact sheet, we've seen loads of these on the park, stones and wooden sticks. The kids have actually taken it out into the park, which is great to see. And next slide, please. And this is the breakdown of how much it costs. So yeah, I didn't think it was that particularly expensive. We probably couldn't have done it within a normal budget, but the project gave us the funding to go a bit elaborate with this consultation, and I think it worked. Next slide, please. So yeah, I would highly recommend Elaine from the Little Green Box Design. She was amazing with some of these concepts. So yeah, if anybody's interested in any of that, I'd highly recommend her. And next slide, please. Any questions?
I've got a question, James. This is not pre-prepared, even though could have done that.
Well done, James.
Because we haven't actually talked about this much, because it's been a kind of FPA thing rather than part of normal park service here. But which bits of this would you use again, and how? because immediately, there's bits of this we could use in even playground consultation and our day-to-day work, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to Lane after she produced it, and she was saying that the same concept could be used for different ways of consulting those ideas. So, I mean, the feedback we've got back so far is the postcard one worked really well regarding the feedback. The one that inspired people most was create your own character and with all the facts about them. And I think that was predominantly because there was the chance of seeing their figure being used in the parks in 3D. But yeah, I'd certainly be using it again for other consultations. If it's not, even if it's not the full elaborate pack, I'd certainly be getting some of those sheets out there because I think it worked well, and it gives them a different sort of way of voicing it rather than the usual sort of classrooms and questions.
Yeah. Good.
James, how are you going to use the information you've gathered now to fashion things that you're doing in the future?
Yeah, so at the moment it's still being processed and analysed, all the feedback we're getting, but again it's going to hopefully it's going to be fed back into the 25-year strategy. It's going to help mould that through that specific demographic of that age group. About basically we'll find out how kids are using their parks at the moment, what they want from it, if there's anything lacking, and how they want to see it in the future. And some of the actual comments coming back about how they want to see their parks in the future is quite inspiring, really. And yeah, it's a pity I've not brought along some of the sort of results, but some of it was like really off the wall that you'd expect with kids, and some of it's really simple and basic that we can actually do. And some of the feedback was quite surprising as well. I was expecting a lot of we want new playgrounds, new play equipment, but it wasn't. There was a bigger picture out there, so it worked in that sense. In hindsight, one of the schools wasn't the greatest with their feedback, which was a bit disappointing. But what was quite interesting was where we put some of the packs in parks, or took out some of the sheets and just left them in parks where people could pick them up. That got a great return. So actually, in hindsight, I probably wished I'd done that more than so many to the schools.
Are you thinking about putting some of those activity sheets online so that people can download them and carry on doing the stuff without having to
yes,
to print it?
Definitely, yes, yeah.
Great. So nothing from anyone else? No, thanks ever so much, James.
Hey, thank you very much.
We're now going to have a 10-minute break, so back at 3:30 if that's all right with everybody.
Yeah, great, thank you.